Okay, so I want to welcome all of you watching wherever you are in the world. This webinar will present information specifically for Andrews University international students. And we will talk about the reopening of Andrews campus and the fall semester. My name is Christon Stuart, and I am the Executive Director of the Center for On-Campus International Student Services. And I will be the moderator of this webinar as well. Before we get started, I want to thank you for watching us today. And I especially want to welcome both our returning and our new international students. So we know that because of the unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic, you have questions, many questions maybe, and we want to respond to those questions and support you however we can. So in just a moment, we will hear from several panelists from the university who will each take a few minutes to share important information about what is happening with our reopening plans for fall and how these plans relate to international students. We will then have a question and answer period at the end. So please think of questions, write your questions if you have some. You can do that starting now, or if they come up during the webinar, you can do it then as they come up. If you are watching us in Zoom, you can use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen to write your questions. If you just want to make a comment, you can write your comment in the chat section, but write the questions in the Q&A feature. If you're following us in Facebook, you can just post questions underneath the video. Now, before we proceed further, I'd like to just pause and offer a quick word of prayer. So if you can bow your head with me wherever you are, we'll pray. Dear Father in heaven, you know that we are going through a time of uncertainty, and many of us may not be exactly sure what our options or our next steps are. You also know our pain, especially the pain we all have because we're all affected by this COVID-19 virus. It's brought us a range of challenges, some in the form of simple inconveniences, and some challenges in the form of pure grief. But we know that you are here with us right now, and we know that you will show us the way. Thank you for bringing us together right at this moment from all over the world so that we can talk together and be informed. I pray in your name, amen. Okay, I think we're ready to start. So now it's time to hear from our panelists, and I will briefly tell you who's coming up, and then we'll start with our first panelist. So the list of panelists are Dr. Christon Arthur, who is our university provost. He will share first, and then that will be followed by Steve Yeagley, who's the assistant vice president for campus and student life. And after Steve Yeagley, we will have Dr. Alayne Thorpe, who is the Dean of the College of Education and International Services, and also the Dean of Graduate Studies. Following Dr. Thorpe, we will have Ben Panigot, who is the Director of Campus Safety, and finally, my colleague and Associate Director of International Student Services, Samara Ferreira. So Dr. Arthur, I will pass it along to you now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Stuart. And to our students, wherever you are in the world, Andrews is a global university, a very diverse campus. And we have students from every continent. Wherever you are, we welcome you. I bring a greetings from our president, who wish he could have been here with you, but can't. Presidents are very busy people, and they have a multitude of tasks and functions that they have to perform. And she's doing just that this evening. Maybe where you are, it's morning, and we greet you whatever time zones you might be in. Let me take a few minutes and talk about the plans we are making to reopen our campus for face-to-face, in-person instruction for the fall of 2020. Our plans are maybe built on three pillars, three fundamental philosophies. The first one has to do with our sense of community. The second has to do with our care for you and your safety. And the third, we'll talk about Andrews being a place of inclusion. So let's talk about our Andrews community. And we do hope that all of you who are on this webinar this evening will be able to join us on campus, be here face-to-face for in-person classroom instruction. This community that we call Andrews is a very vibrant and engaged, a very intellectually stimulating community, a community that cares for each other. The members care for each other. And so this is the first major point I want to leave with you, that as a community, we're making a covenant promise to you that we will do everything in our power, each person, to be responsible, to act judiciously, to care for their own personal safety, for them to do things to care for the safety of others. You know, we do have a public health crisis globally, in many parts of the United States. It just so happens that we're located in Michigan, one of the few states that have seen a leveling off, but there are many other states where the pandemic, the virus is really taking a toll. But for us to be successful, we have to, in a sense, be each other's keeper. We have to engage in behavior not only that will protect our own safety, but in behaviors that will protect the safety of others and nurture the health of others. For example, so what kinds of things can we do to make sure that we have a safe campus when we open in the fall? The first will be that we'll engage in testing for COVID-19. So every one of our students will be tested. That will give us some baseline data that we'll know, we'll have a certain level of confidence that the students who interact with us, we have done the test and we know what that health status is as it relates to COVID-19. But the testing is not enough. We will also engage in physical or social distancing. So in our classrooms, we'll arrange our furnishing in a way that there are spaces in between students, so that social, physical distancing is also there. But also require that every member of the Andrews family, the Andrews community, will wear face coverings. This will be a protection so that as we interact, as we speak, as we learn together, it will limit the spread of any particles that might come from our mouth as we speak, as we interact. And by doing that, limit the spread of the virus. We'll take plans like this to mitigate the spread. What we do now, but as human beings, we are social. So some of our students may have to travel off campus, may have to interact with other students, other persons who are not within the walls or the gates or the community that we call Andrews. And by doing so, they might be exposed to the virus from other persons who are not on our campus. We're going to contact trace. We have an app that will expect, require that every person will have on their phones. And so as they interact with other persons, we'll gather data. You'll input data. We'll also gather data from the app that you'll have. So it'll give us a sense as to where you might have been. And based on potential exposure, we'll test again to see whether or not a person might have contracted the virus, and then act accordingly. We'll ask that we clean up after ourselves. When we use spaces in the classroom, we might have sat on a chair, use a desk, use different surfaces. At the end of that class period, we provide the materials, we provide the equipment, we provide the means for you to clean the space that you have used, clean the surfaces that you have used, so that those who come to use that surface after you have left that space will have a clean surface to use. Keep in mind, back to this idea of community, that in a community we care not only about ourselves, but we care for each other. And so we'll have safety protocols that will help us to take care of ourselves, but also to look at the well-being of those around us. And the final point, this whole idea of being inclusive. You have your own unique story, you have your own unique circumstance, maybe even a unique challenge. And we want to respond to that, to your uniqueness, that unique circumstance that you might be in, and make it possible that you might still be part of the Andrews community. So maybe because of many reasons, medical reasons, your visa's not being processed in time, maybe you'll have a good reason why you can't be with us in person, face to face in Barron Springs on our main campus. But we'll be making available to you different courses that you may be able to take from a distance, because we want you to be part of the Andrews community. Our first preference would be that you're here with us, physically present. But if that's not possible, we'll do everything we can to make sure you're part of at least that virtual community, that you can still engage in the rich learning that will happen as part of the Andrews campus. We'll share with you ways in which you can tell us of those circumstances, and then what we can do to make accommodations so that you can still be part of the Andrews community. We look forward to having you here in the fall. And I hope that if everything works out and your visa is processed in time and your travel plans hold together, that when you're here on campus, we have a chance to meet, say hello, social distance, face covering, but still interact and have community. And if you can't be here physically with us, I'm hoping we get a chance to meet you virtually, to tell you how much we care for you. And we'll be so happy that you're part of one of the greatest communities that we know of, and that is to be a part of this noble institution that we call Andrews University. God bless you. Looking forward to meeting you. Thank you very much.
I want to say hello to each of you in our international student community. We are so glad that you're watching this evening and thinking about your plans to either return to Andrews University campus or perhaps to join us for the first time. And I would like to just add a little bit more to what Dr. Arthur has already said in terms of what you might expect to experience when you come to campus. Again, whether it's your first time or whether you're returning. First of all, I'd like to say that we are working hard right now in the Student Life Division to make certain that our spiritual and social activities are going to go forward in a rich and meaningful way, but in a way that is also safe. So you may expect to find groups that are smaller groups that are doing activities. Of course, there will be physical distancing in those activities, but we still plan to meet, and we still plan to have the kind of experiences that people come to a campus for, which allows them to interact with others and to make memories. Dining services is going to look perhaps different than you've experienced before. You will pick up a ready-made meal. There won't be any buffets, at least at the beginning of the semester. You will simply pick your meal up, and we will have outdoor dining spaces, as well as, again, distanced or reduced density in our indoor dining spaces. When it comes to your first days on campus, orientation, a couple things to know there. As Dr. Arthur has mentioned, we do want to test everyone for COVID-19 upon entering the campus. And some of you may be coming earlier than Sunday the 16th. You may be coming early August, already be here locally. And we will have some early testing dates from August 10 to August 12 for those that are living locally or already here. And then on Sunday, August 16, we will begin testing those who are just arriving. And we will have our move-in days on Sunday and Monday, along with the testing, and get you situated on campus. But one thing to be aware of is once you are tested for the next 48 hours, we're going to do two things. Number one, we're not going to plan any group programs, as we often do during orientation week. All those programs will be delivered virtually. And we're going to be asking you as students, as much as possible, to have limited contact with other people so that we can get our results back, determine who may be positive, isolate them from the rest of the group, and then move on with their programming from there. So that's something that you should know about your first days on campus. The new international student orientation is going to happen on Tuesday, August 18, 9 a.m. in the morning. And again, that will be done by Zoom so that you can remain apart during this time of distancing while we get the test results in. And then I should probably also say that Dr. Arthur has just mentioned a number of things that we're going to be asking every student to do, like wearing face masks and remaining physically distant, and a number of other things. In fact, I am going to actually right now go ahead and put a link both in the Facebook page as well as in the chat here that will link you to a document called Preparing for Life at Andrews this Fall. It's going to give a number of those details that we may not have time to cover everyone here this evening. And I'd encourage you to go out there and read that. But one of the things we'll ask you to do is to sign what we're calling a community covenant of care. And we want to hold each other accountable to doing those things that will keep not just us safe, but will keep others around us also safe and well. We think that that is something that we're responsible to do. And those codes of care will become part of our student code of conduct as well as our employee handbook, so that it's clear to everyone that these are expectations that we will hold each other accountable to. So those are just a few things about our new life at Andrews. And it won't be like our old life, but we believe that it can still be rich, and that everything that you hope to gain from an Andrews University experience will be here. And we'll be going through this, as we often say, we'll be going through this together. And I think that oftentimes when we move through challenging situations together, it can even bring us closer. And that's what we are hoping and praying for, is that we will band together during this time, be bonded together as a community campus, and grow together through what has been for many a very challenging experience. So thank you. I'm going to ask now that Alayne Thorpe, Dean Thorpe, go ahead and tell you a little bit about the learning environment.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Yeagley. Thank you, Dr. Arthur. I think they've given you the framework within which we will be working next in the fall semester at Andrews University. We really like it here in Berrien Springs. And we've missed you. Those of you who are current international students, we've missed you because you've been studying remotely. You've been studying either from your homes or from your parents' homes, and we've really missed you and all of our other students. But we understand that there are things that might make it very difficult for you to come. We know that sometimes embassies are not open. We also know that travel can be very difficult in this time of the pandemic. And so we understand that there are many things that might happen that could prevent you from coming on campus in Berrien Springs. So Andrews University has made it possible for those of you who cannot come on campus to continue to study remotely as you have been for the last part of the spring semester and for the summer. This is possible because we have faculty members who are very capable and willing to make it possible to offer the same quality of education to you, whether you're here on campus at Andrews University or whether you're studying from China or from any place in Asia, Africa, Europe, wherever you are in the world. Andrews University is determined to help you meet your educational goals. So while we want you to come to Andrews, if you cannot and you want to continue your education, you just contact your advisor or you contact the advisor for your college. If you're studying in the seminary, you would contact Dr. Teresa Reed. If you're an undergraduate student, then you contact explore@andrews.edu, and that's Erin Mushan. Not every major will be available at the undergraduate level, but many will be. And we are making special accommodations for freshmen who cannot come. I know that there are some of you who are worried that maybe if you do come, you're going to be maybe coming a little late, and you might miss some of the testing processes that Dr. Yeagley and Dr. Arthur talked about. It's perfectly fine. If you come a little late because of travel problems, we will make it possible for you to get testing. Everyone who comes on campus at Andrews University, even if you have been delayed, you will get tests. And as I said before, if you're a parent and you're concerned for your son or your daughter, I understand that. I resonate with that because I have a nephew who's very dear to me who's going into college this year, and he's talking about whether he stays in Maryland or comes to campus. It's a big decision to make. We want you to know that wherever you are, Andrews is there for you. So if you come on campus, we will provide you with high quality programs, both at the graduate and undergraduate level. But if you cannot come on campus, either because you're worried or because you cannot get a visa or you cannot travel, we will make it possible for you to continue your study. All you have to do is contact your advisor. I think at this time, I'm going to hand off to Ben Panigot, my colleague, and I know there are going to be questions, which we will pick up later.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I wanted to take a moment to talk about some of the safety aspects that we're going to see on campus this semester. One of the things that we're working for mitigation for COVID-19 is working with our facilities to reduce risks of transmission. Some of these changes include using paper towels instead of air dryers in our restrooms, installing foot poles on our restroom doors so you don't have to use your hands on the door handles, closing drinking fountains by promoting use of water bottle fill stations, identifying doors that can be propped open while still complying with our local fire code. We're also increasing the number of contactless stations that will dispense hand sanitizer with an alcohol-based solution. We're also working on ways to clean our campus more thoroughly in regards to COVID, making sure that our chemicals and application method are rated for COVID and will be an efficient use for us. We're also making sure that individual departments will have cleaning supplies And even for our students, you'll have cleaning supplies to clean your own personal individual areas. We're also updating our procedures to make sure that we're ready to respond to any incident on campus regarding COVID and making sure it's cleaned and ready for future use. We're also making sure that we have education pieces in place to make sure we all know what's expected on campus and we can have those reminders to continue to be safe. Some of those signage include reminders to do your screening, to wear a face covering, maintain physical distancing. We're putting up signage in our lobbies and lounges to talk about what the new occupancy maximums will be there, so we don't have too many people in one space at any time. Signage to stress the importance of hygiene, to close out some spaces that may not be available, to curate that distance, and also working on classroom layout for the physical distancing. We're also working with every department on campus to ensure that procedures are in place to maintain our operations in a COVID-19 safe manner. So this can include offering more remote services, changing some forms to an electronic form versus an original paper or hard copy. For services that are going to remain in person, making sure that we maintain physical distance or have physical barriers, and also have personal protective equipment like face masks or shields. We're also coordinating with our student life and human resource departments to make sure that students and employees are protected on our campus. One way we're doing this is developing a robust contact trace program to make sure that we're identifying any potential exposures and isolating them before it becomes a transmission risk. We're working on education and training opportunities to make sure that the campus is up to date with best practices and our expectations with COVID. We've also obtained reusable cloth masks to issue to every employee and student on campus. And for all of our students, we'll also be providing thermometers. As Dr. Arthur had mentioned earlier, we have partnered with some third-party vendors to include an app that students and employees will be asked to use that will help with daily screening for symptoms and exposure. It'll offer an education portal, access to telehealth, and contact tracing. And for those that are curious about contact tracing, the systems do not use GPS location. So we're not tracking where people are, but it does use Bluetooth to help us know who was around you. We're also working with a third-party vendor for the testing as well. And lastly, with all these systems being put in place, we want to make sure that we have the best plan. And that comes with coordinating with subject matter experts. Our local health department is helping us, our local hospital system. And out of our College of Health and Human Services, we have faculty on campus who are in this profession already, and they're involved in our planning as well. With all this, we hope to create a safe environment for you to be on campus. And for those that not, we hope to see you in January. With that, we're going to pass it on to a colleague, Samara, our Associate Director for International Student Services.
Thank you, Ben. Hello, everyone. I am glad to be here and able to give you some information about what is going to happen to the international students with the visas and I-20s. We know that this pandemic has disrupted our lives in many, many ways. I have received many emails from students concerned about what is going to happen to their status and also their ability to come to the US. As Dr. Arthur mentioned, Indian University has been proactive putting together a plan, and you just heard from Ben as well, how to a plan so students can feel safe as they come back on campus. In the middle of all this situation, there is good news that you are hearing right now. While many other places are closing and some institutions are closing, Andrews University is open. Andrews University is open to serve our students. So not only national students are applying and get accepted, but international students can apply, get accepted, and join the world changers here at Andrews University. I am so happy for that Andrews University is open. We have been in contact with the government every moment, and so we don't miss any information in order to better help you. But as of now, we do not have received yet guidelines from the government for the fall semester. So we are basing our what we are doing right now on the information that we have for the summer, and up until now, we are sending I-20s to students. And the good thing is, I can issue an I-20 to you and send it to you right away. We don't have to wait for the UPS arrive. You don't have to pay for the UPS, for the carrier to bring the I-20 to your house. I-20 can be sent to you by email. I can sign it electronically, and it is acceptable when you get the visa and enter United States. They are going to accept that signature because it is the thing right now. And before we couldn't even send I-20s by email, and now we can. So I can issue I-20s to you very fast, right away. Students, the only thing that you have to do if you are a new student, you are outside the United States, and you need an I-20. What we have to do, we have to call your embassy or check or if your embassy is open in issuing visas. Some embassies, they are not issuing student visas, but some, as we've heard, they are going to start. But it's important for you to check with your embassy, U.S. embassy in your country. And then if you get the visa, don't hesitate. Come to Andrews University. But if your embassy is not issuing visa, don't get discouraged. As you heard Dr. Alayne Thorpe saying, you can start your program remotely, and you are not going to be missing anything because you are starting remotely. And when you get a visa and arrive over here, you can be able to attend classes face to face and enjoy the campus community here. So if you received your I-20 and if you have paid the CVIS fee, $350, and your embassy is not issuing visas at this moment, so contact us so we can defer your I-20 to the next semester. If you tell us ahead of time, you are going to be using the same, going to be able to use the same fee. You don't have to pay the fee again, the CVIS fee again. This fee is valid for 12 months. So if we postpone to the next semester or even further, your fee is valid for 12 months from the time that you have paid it, and you might have the receipt with you. So those that are here, or those that are that have already the visa, student visa, to enter the United States, and if it's possible for you to travel, by all means, come to Andrews, and we are here just waiting for you and missing you guys here, and we can't wait for this. I can't wait to have this campus with all the students back here on campus. I know there's a lot of questions I have received after today already. Lots of questions about specific questions about F2, F1. If they can study as F2. All of those questions, if you have any, you can send a message on the chat below, and we are going to be answering on the Q&A session. But before I send it over to Dr. Stuart, I loved this quote that I read this morning, and then it says this: in every crisis, doubt, or confusion, take the higher path, the path of compassion, courage, understanding, and love. And that's what Andrews University is doing right now. In the middle of this crisis, we are taking the higher path. And as you noticed, everyone was told before how much is being put into the organizing and planning and everything that we are doing over here. It is with a lot of love, because we want you here. We love you. We love our international students, and we want you here. I want you to be loved, not only if you are here on campus, but if you are taking remotely classes as well. I want you to feel part of this community. So let's join together with this and take this higher path, and let the fall come. We are here waiting for you. Dr. Stuart, I'm going to pass it on to you now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you to all the panelists for sharing that information. There were a few questions that I saw pop up in the Q&A section, but most of those have been answered. So this is just a quick reminder. If you have questions, now is a good time to post your questions. If you're in Zoom, down below in the Q&A section, just write your question there. If you're in Facebook, just post a question underneath the video. Let's see. One question just popped up about OPT. The question is, I would like to know if the OPT program is still open to international students at the end of the career, is what it says. I think the question is about OPT. How is that affected by COVID?
Right now, we are working as normal as before. We are helping students when they are finishing the program, send to me all the paperwork, and I will show one recommending you for OPT, and then you submit it, you mail it to the USCIS, and they are the ones issuing OPT. I have not heard anything different. Everything is still as normal as before.
There has been a lot of discussion about OPT and whether that was going to be discontinued, but it has not been. So far everything is the same. You can move forward with your OPT. If you can come, you get your visa. You move forward with your program. OPT is still available at this time.
We have another new question. This one's about quarantine. So the question is, do we have to quarantine ourselves before we enter Andrews? I don't know, Dr. Yeagley, this might be one for you, or anyone. It's open to anyone, the question about quarantine before coming to Andrews.
Sure, I might want to call Ben in on this question as well. The university is not going to require quarantine of students. As I said earlier, the day that you move in, you will be tested. And if you move into the residence hall, we will ask you to maintain a 48-hour window in which you have limited contact with others. And then once those test results are received, we will separate out anyone who's tested positive into a separate facility for some quarantine time. But the university, that's the only sort of quarantine or limited contact period the university will require. I think, though, if we're answering this for an international student, and Ben, this is where I'd like maybe you to weigh in, there may be some quarantine requirements at the borders.
Yes, Dr. Yeagley, that would be correct. So from the university's perspective, even for every time we do a screening, we talk about exposure concerns, whether with somebody from COVID or traveling from an area that had significant widespread transmission of COVID. And other than that, yes, if you are flying into the U.S. through an international airport, there may be screening there as well, which they may direct another type of isolation.
Okay, thank you. Shifting gears here a little bit, there's a question about, and I think Dr. Thorpe's answered this, but I want to confirm this with Dr. Thorpe. Does the MDiv program have a constant? That's a new one. There was another one about MDiv. Who do I need to contact to get in? Who do I need to get into contact to start my course remotely? Dr. Thorpe, you said Dean Teresa Reeve. Is that right?
Yes, Dean Teresa Reeve's office, excuse me. Or you can actually contact the MDiv office as well. The advisor, Mona, in the MDiv office can also answer this question. Really, in most cases, the advisor for the program is quite adequate. And Dr. Reeve is just also there as a fallback in case you don't hear anything from because of summer and breaks. We want to make sure that you get your answers quickly. So either Dr. Reeve or the MDiv office itself. And the MDiv has courses in homiletics. You'll certainly learn to improve and grow in that area, but I don't know if I would say it has a concentration in homiletics.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, moving to a question about visas once again. As a returning student, if I'm not able to attend in-person classes for the fall semester, but can return in the spring, what is the procedure in reference to my visa? Do I need to reapply or get an update?
Okay. If you are deferring to spring, if you cannot come right now, you're deferring to spring, just again, let us know that you are deferring or coming to spring so we can issue an I-20 to the spring semester. And then with this I-20, you go to your embassy in the U.S. embassy in your country and apply for a visa, for an F1 visa, to come to attend classes in the spring. And you can come into the country 30 days before classes starts.
Just to let you know, in the chat bar, I've put, just to kind of recap from what several of the panelists were saying, if you are an undergraduate student and you're wondering about remote learning options, the best thing to do is to contact Explore Andrews, and I put the email address there so you can send an email to ask about remote learning options, and that's for undergraduate students. And I will put a few more email addresses there too, so you have some options on where to go if you're seeking information about remote learning. All right, another question has popped up. Seeing that the US-Canada border is still an uncertain situation, can I take a full load of classes online for the fall semester? And this question is specifically about the MLS program. Are there any panelists that can answer that question?
So for the MLS program, there will be many options available for you to do remote. If you can't come, if the border is still closed and you're not able to come into the US from Canada, we have made it very possible, Dr. Reiner, for you to do almost a full load. I'm not going to promise it's a complete load because there may be one class that isn't, we can't do remotely, and I'm not sure what level you are for MLS. But yes, MLS is one of the programs that has made accommodations for remote delivery.
Okay, thank you. So another question now, shifting gears again, another question about testing and the 48-hour separation. What are the logistics of that? How will that work?
Right. I think the questioner here has asked, how would it work if I have a roommate? Mm-hmm. And that touches on an important issue that I did not discuss before. There are going to be two different types of housing that students can request. Our normal housing arrangement would be with a roommate. We would consider those roommates like a family unit. So they would not be wearing masks in the room. They would be accountable to each other just like a family would in their own home. Or if students have reasons that they would like to live alone, we are offering a lower rate on a single room, starting with this year. It's a 25% more to live alone in a single room if a student wishes to do that. During the 48-hour window, if both roommates happen to come together, they will be in the same room together. Obviously, we would want them to do their best to have as much distance between them as possible. But they're going to be treated more as a family unit. And if they can limit their contact really to just one another, tracing that situation, if one were to be positive and the other not, would be much, much easier for us. So again, in an environment like a residence hall, we cannot guarantee that there is no risk. What we can do is reduce the risk. And during this 48-hour window, we're asking students to reduce that risk by limiting their contact as far as possible with other students.
I could also ask our panelists who have been on several of these webinars, if, not to put you on the spot, but if there are any questions that have come up in previous webinars that you think is very useful for students in this webinar to know, this might be a good time to address those questions as well. Okay, here's a question, a couple questions just popped up. First one, if I'm not able to attend for the fall semester, do I need to reapply for the summer semester, or my application, is it still valid? Okay, so I think just interpreting this question, if I've applied for a semester, but I don't come in that semester, and then I come at another semester, do I need to apply again? So that's one question.
So if you've applied and been accepted, all you have to do is ask to be deferred.
Yep.
And then you don't have to apply again. We want you to come, but we understand that you may not be able to. So all you need to do is let us know, I have a problem, I cannot come, I want to be deferred. And then your application will still be valid. You don't have to fill out a new application. You'll be deferred and you'll be able to come when you're able. And then there was a great question about essential personnel. that there are places in the Canadian U.S. border where essential personnel can cross, and whether we would consider Andrews University students to be essential personnel. I consider Andrews University students to be essential personnel. I'm not sure that the Canadian government does, but I certainly do. I don't know, because we aren't, but coming closer to, because we live in a world where things change every 24 hours. And so we really don't know what the situation is going to be even next week, much less in August. But I'm hoping by that time, travel between the US and Canada will be easier than it is now.
And there was one other new question. Thank you, Dr. Thorpe. There's one other new question that has just come through. And the question, it's again about Canada. So if we plan to travel across the border from Canada to the US, and at the last minute they close the borders again, can online learning be set up quickly? So I think this question is really about when do I need to make a decision about online learning? If I'm anticipating coming to campus, and again, we all hope you do, but if for some reason at the last minute that doesn't work, can there be a sudden shift to online?
Let me explain what we're doing at Andrews. Andrews University does offer some programs online because we have students who can never come to our campus. They're working, they have families, they're unable to come to campus. And so we have a number of degree programs that are offered completely online. As much as we'd like to see those students, we usually just hear from them. Sometimes we talk to them via Zoom like we're talking to you. The programs that we're making available to you, the programs that we offer on our campus face-to-face, we have very enterprising and caring faculty who want to make it possible for students to come on our campus, but understand that that might not be possible. So these programs are going to be available through remote delivery, but they're going to be basically the programs that are taught in the classroom. So if you cannot come at the last minute, something happens, the border is closed, even 1 hour before the course starts, as long as you're registered, you just let us know and you will have access. You will have access to exactly the same materials and information that students will have on campus, because we're going to make those things available to you through our learning management system, through Zoom and other ways of transmitting information. But you will need to have an internet connection and equipment, a laptop computer or an iPad, so that you can actually participate in the class. But because we live in a changing world and these things can happen, changes can happen overnight, we want to be as flexible as possible. At the graduate level especially, we are going to make that possible for you. At the undergraduate level, if you're a freshman, there will be a special program available for freshmen too, which we've mentioned, remote, taught through Explore and coordinated by Erin Mouchon. That also, if you cannot come, you need to let us know. And you're a freshman, you need to let us know. And then there will be many classes at the undergraduate level that we will make available for you. So you always need to be in touch with your advisors, no matter what your program is.
Okay, thank you very much. Here's another new question. What is the procedure if a roommate later in the semester becomes positive with COVID, but the other roommate is negative?
So what we would do in that instance is that the student who has tested positive would be quarantined in our separate facility, which is not in the residence halls, but is across campus. The student who has had close contact, and any other student that has had close contact with the positive student recently, would be asked to shelter in place in their room until a test could be done and we could receive a negative result for any of the contacts of the person who had tested positive. So that's how we would handle that situation with a roommate or with any other student who had had recent close contact with the positive student. They would be tested, but they would be asked to be sheltered in place in their room until we could get that done and get the results back. And hopefully that way we can just arrest the spread any further.
So there was one question. I think we've touched on this, but just to confirm, there's a question again about the seminary. Are there any long distance learning, remote learning programs for MDiv? There are, and I've put the email address for MDiv in the chat section, so you can email MDiv about remote learning options in MDiv, but about the PhD program in the seminary.
Yeah, and that would be Dr. Reeve. So all seminary programs will have remote options because we have so many wonderful international students in the seminary. We don't want them to be deprived if they're unable to travel. So the seminary, if you're not in the MDiv program, any other program, Dr. Teresa Reeve. Social work, please contact social work and find out what is available if you're interested in remote teaching for the master's degree in social work.
Okay. Here's another question. This one is back in the I-20 and the visa world. So the question is, currently the U.S. government requires students returning for school to provide a valid I-20 and proof that the school is open during the pandemic. Would the school be able to provide an official letter stating that the school is open?
If you were a returning student, you might have your I-20, a valid I-20. And if you left the school, United States, you might have brought your I-20 to be signed by the international office, the travel signature, the endorsement, travel signature. So if you have that signature valid, it is valid from the date that I signed, a year from the date that I signed. So if that signature is valid, you just can cross the border or enter the United States and show that I-20 with the endorsement for travel, and you are fine. You're going to be fine. But if you have not, if you forgot to get a signature from our office, then let me know. Send me an email or to iss@andrews.edu, and I can reprint your I-20 and email it to you. Now, regarding letters that we are open, the I-20 is already it's an indicator that we are open. But we could work on that. I don't know. Maybe Dr. Thorpe can talk about that if there is a need for a letter.
So I think that, yes, we can provide you with the letter if you're coming in the fall, because Andrews will be physically open in the fall, and we can easily provide you with a letter if that's what you need, and it will help you. Any signed I-20 that you have from Andrews by any person is completely valid, as long as the date is valid. So yes, and if you're coming to the university in the fall, we can provide you with a letter saying that we're open in the fall.
Okay, thank you very much. More questions are coming in. That's great. So here's one. Is there any risk to get infected by the virus through the HVAC system in the dorm, please?
I can take that one.
Perfect.
So we talk about transmission risk. Some of the things that we talk about is duration of exposure, proximity, and also concentration of viral bodies. So when we look at air going through an HVAC system, if somebody were to expel viral bodies, by the time it circles through the HVAC, the concentration is significantly decreased. That being said, the university is making sure that our HVAC systems are being cleaned regularly, that filters are being changed. We also have some vendors coming on campus to look at some other options. But at this point, the risk is lower there, and the higher concern is going to be about sharing the same air in the same space, not necessarily going through the HVAC system.
May I add one little piece to that? You might have heard in some other venues that there are special filters or special ionization that could be added to the HVAC system to minimize the threat of the virus. And in some cases, to use the layman's language, to zap that virus because of the ionization that might be added to the filters in the HVAC system. And for our residence halls, what Mr. Panigot was talking about, for our residence halls, we've made a decision because you have to sleep in there for 8 hours, hopefully 8 hours, and not 2 or 3. For our residence halls, we've made the decision to add that special filter into our HVAC system to minimize that risk even more.
Okay, thank you. There's one other question. This one's very specific. It's for biology students. We can see if panelists know the answer to this. Otherwise, it might be a question where we would need to contact the biology department, but the question is for second-year biology students, would there be a full online program offered to them if attending in person is not possible?
This is another case where the best thing would be to contact the advisor in the biology program. Actually, you can start also by contacting Aaron Mouchon. He can put you in touch with people in biology. At the undergraduate level, there will be courses available remotely, but I cannot say that all programs will be available remotely because we're not sure. However, we think that given the way in which we're going to be very careful in planning, that we are going to do everything we can at the undergraduate level to meet all of your needs. So always make sure you contact an advisor. If you can't reach an advisor at the undergraduate level, Aaron Mouchon at explore@andrews.edu.
Thank you. And again, that's explore@andrews.edu, and that's somewhere in the chat bar. I put that. Okay. Another question for people that live in the university apartments but temporarily moved to their home state in March and left their belongings in their apartment. Is the school considering a lower rent payment option for them until they return?
I think that sort of specific question would be best addressed to our director of university apartments. So I will put his email in the chat as well as on Facebook so that you can contact him. I think generally in circumstances where students have to leave for a few months and then return, we encourage the use of local storage facilities rather than, an apartment where you still, where you take out a lease. But in this specific circumstance, I would certainly reach out to Alfredo Ruiz, who's our director of housing.
Thank you. And the email information will be in the chat. One question is about testing, specifically when after students are initially tested, when the students leave campus, are they going to be retested? And I'm assuming that means coming and going. So what are the plans for retesting?
Yes, Ben may want to get ready to chime in, but basically in the long letter that I sent, we called our entire community to practice all of the careful guidelines that the provost shared with you earlier. When they leave to go to Berrien Springs, when they leave to go to South Bend, that they should be continuing to follow the mask and physical distancing, et cetera. So we do not have a general plan to retest a student every time they return from campus. However, we've arranged for adequate testing to be able to do follow-up testing where we feel it would be helpful to do it. But no, we are not planning to test again and again every time individuals leave campus, but we would ask them continue wherever you are to follow all of the safe guidelines that we will ask you to do on campus as well as off campus. Ben, anything else to add there?
Sure. Thanks, Dean Fainer. You covered most of it. The only other thing I would mention is that here in Berrien County, where Andrews University is located, we do have a robust testing program as well from our local health department. So we won't be necessarily testing every student based on them leaving the property, but if there is somebody who may require additional testing through the semester, Andrews will be looking at it. We also have the health department as well. So it'll be a combined approach.
I could add one more thing to this piece here. And I think that's where our contact tracing would be helpful as well, because as was noted earlier, using that Bluetooth technology, if a student were to, when they leave campus, go to an area where after the fact we realize that that area might have had a spike or the student might have had some exposure to the virus, we will test based on our contact tracing. So it's not random, but it is intentional and data driven.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, there are more questions popping up, and I'm seeing some themes here to these questions. And one of the themes is about the remote learning plans. And one of the questions is, after I start classes via remote learning in fall, will I be able to continue with my program after the flights are back open, or do I have to do remote for the entire program? And this person's asking about MDiv, but I think we can apply that to any program. So when you start in fall remotely, can you come to campus whenever it's okay, or do you have to keep going remotely?
So one of the things that we are working on is trying to make it as flexible as possible. And the way, especially if you're in the MDiv program, and it will vary slightly from program to program, but if you're in the MDiv program, the seminary has been designing the remote teaching so that if by some wonderful stroke of luck or divine intervention, you're able to travel and get on campus, you would be able to come into the classroom and pick up right where you left off from online, because they will be basically twinned. They will be parallel. So there should be no interruption. I think also, Dr. Stuart, there were some questions about hands-on activities. Mm-hmm. Almost every graduate program will be available via remote instruction, but there might be some exceptions to that if we're looking at very hands-on lab-based experiences. There are some courses where that will be possible to provide, some courses where it may not. So for those of you who are already our graduate students and you cannot travel, you cannot come on campus and enjoy the beautiful Berrien Springs weather, please contact your advisor and they can tell you what we can do. We will work with your schedule. We will work with you so you will not be held up, because we're as determined for you to be able to continue through this COVID crisis as you are. We want to empower you. We want to make it possible for you to continue working towards your educational goals, whether that is remotely or on campus with us in Berrien Springs.
Okay, thank you very much. Another question about remote learning. And I think I might be able to help answer this too, but I'm going to let the panelists go first. What are the procedures to join the remote classes until flights are open in my country is the question. So it depends on if you're at the graduate or undergraduate level. We're doing everything we can to accommodate you. So the first thing is to contact your advisor. And then because these courses are going to be available through Learning Hub, you just basically need to register. We're making the process as similar to on-campus registration as we can. And so it's really just a matter of contacting your advisor, letting them know that something is preventing you from coming on campus and you want to go with remote teaching. Basically, that's all you have to do. Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else want to talk about the procedures for joining the remote learning options? The only other thing I'll add is that if you are an undergrad student, there is a special package of classes that are being put together through the Explore Andrews office. And I am in the chat section, I am putting the email address. If you're interested, if you're an undergraduate student and you're interested in what sorts of undergrad packages of classes will be offered remotely in fall, you can send an email to the address that I'm submitting right now. It's at explore@andrews.edu. Hopefully everyone can see that. There's one question: do international graduate students need to show their I-20 to the international office when they arrive back on campus, whenever they arrive back on campus? So maybe that's a question for Samara Ferreira. What about I-20s in returning?
Well, as we are going to organize a way for them to, when they arrive, they bring to us the document, because we have to see the passport and the I-20. However, we are waiting also with the new guidelines from SCVP. But yes.
Okay.
That's different.
Thank you very much. Okay. Moving to yet another topic. Many international students living on campus and in the community have not been able to work and make money to fund themselves for the coming semester. Are there any support systems? What is Andrews going to do to help international students in this regard? So what support systems are in place, if any?
I don't think, Dean Fainer, you may want to answer this, and then I will chime in after you.
So we've been so concerned about this very, very critical issue, and have reached out to friends of Andrews several months ago and had a wonderfully generous response. Unfortunately, even with the generous response, at this point, we've been only able to assist about 262, I know the number exactly, international students with a modest amount of funds. And so, yes, as my administrative colleagues get ready to think about how difficult it's going to be for international students to register with the down payments that are needed. The best I can share with you is the fundraisers are continuing to spend all of their time continuing to ask the Friends of the University to continue to help our students afford to register during this pandemic. So we'll know in another month or so how those efforts are going and whether they will continue to be of modest help, but perhaps enough to have given you a little surprise with your needs. So Dr. Thorpe, maybe you can chime in as well if you have more to add.
So we have been very happy with the generosity of the community and how our donors have worked together with our development office to provide these funds. We wish there were more. We wish that we could triple, quadruple, just really grow the funds. However, there are also other little repositories of money that can be used to assist students. The Graduate Student Office, for example, has an emergency fund, which we have used, working very closely with Dean Feiner, with Dr. Feiner, and making sure that students get funds that they need. Not huge amounts, but still quite helpful. There are also in the seminary and in other schools, in the College of Education, for example, funds that are available to provide support for some students. So we don't want, if you are in financial difficulties, please contact the Graduate Student Office. If you're a graduate student, you can always contact Dean Feiner's office. We are here to help you. International Student Office as well. We will do everything we can to help you. And sometimes money isn't necessarily what you need, but there are other resources available to you too.
Okay, thank you. A somewhat related question. Will there be a separate tuition structure for the remote online program in fall, remote classes in fall?
So the tuition, one of the things we have to be very clear on, and I invite anyone else to jump into to this discussion too, is that Andrews University is not a remote university. We deliver, we have some programs that we deliver online. And if you decide to study online, you're welcome to do that. But programs for which we're able to issue I-20s and work with international students cannot be online because there's no need for a visa then. So for you to come on campus, you have to really study with one of our face-to-face campus-based programs. And those programs are designed for extra support for you, for providing the kind of support that maybe an online program might not. So first of all, we can't really change too much of the tuition structure because even though they're taught remotely, they're really not remote degrees. And the federal government has very big restrictions on that, allowing international students to study remotely now because of the pandemic, but not issuing new I-20s for students who are studying in online programs. So we need to always make sure we're clear about that distinction. These are not online programs. You are studying remotely a face-to-face program that has a separate tuition structure. And that's really why we're not changing tuition because of that.
Maybe I could add one little piece there to what Dr. Thorpe just mentioned. Those programs, they are face-to-face programs which are taken remotely because of the pandemic. And those courses and programs are taught by our full-time campus faculty. They're not taught by a whole bunch of adjuncts. So these programs, for all intent and purposes, exactly the same as the on-campus programs, except for the remote delivery. So you'll have the same instructors, the same full professors, the same experts in the field who we have hired to be the best persons for those programs in a face-to-face environment. And you'll have access to all of those, all of the resources that we have on campus. And because of that, that fee structure would remain the same because the cost of the program is not lessened because it's offered remotely. As a matter of fact, the cost of the program would have been increased because we have to add so much more support and technology and all of that to make that program available to you remotely. So there's no reduced cost on our end. And because of that, and having the same fully qualified faculty who are full-time faculty, the cost remains as they have been as face-to-face.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Arthur. I'm seeing several questions about visas and the fact that embassies are not open. Most embassies are not open around the world. There are some very specific questions about specific cases. And in those, for those questions, what I'm going to do again in the chat, I'm going to list the email address. So if you have a specific question about your case, about your own I-20 or visa case, I think the best thing to do is to send an email to International Student Services, and I put the email address there. But there are a few general questions about visas and embassy closures. One is, how long should we wait to see if the embassy is going to open in time for fall, in time to get a visa and I-20 completed by fall? When, in other words, when should we consider deferring to spring? When should we consider the remote learning options? Is there a specific date in mind for when we could still make a visa appointment?
I think I can take that one. For visas appointments, you have to check with your U.S. embassy in your country. However, for you to defer your I-20, you can defer. At, any time throughout the semester. When you see that it is not happening, you are not really coming, and then you send us an email, and I can defer the I-20, so especially if you have paid the CVIS fee. If you have paid CVIS fee, it's very important for us to defer, so you don't have to pay again. But if you paid, that's the thing, most important. But if you don't pay, then if you has not paid yet, then that's fine. We can issue a new I-20 to you any time. But especially for those that paid CVIS fee, it's important to defer. Once again, it's important to defer so you don't pay again $350 for I-20.
Okay, thank you. And another question about visas. This one is about the recent executive order, and certain visas were affected. And the question is specifically about J study visas. Are J study visas included in the executive order looking at suspending those visas, at least for now?
For now, what the information we have is that they are issuing visas only for emergency visas, and J is not included in that. So only emergency visas, only the visas that they have to be here, but J is not included in that. J and F, M is not included in that. H1B, L1, R1 are not emergency.
Thank you. This question is, in some ways, I think Dr. Arthur has touched on this question, but I can still bring it up. There's a concern about how COVID is affecting the quality of graduate programs. The question is specifically asking about staff reductions and the possibility that will affect the quality of the service graduate students receive.
So thank you. That's a good question. everything that we do at Andrews, we strive to be strategic, and we keep that question foremost in our minds. If we make that decision, how would that impact on our mission? How would it impact on our quality? So when we make reductions in faculty or staff or employees across the board, we make sure that those reductions will not compromise the quality of the programs that we offer or compromise the mission of the institution. So those two things are always at play. So the reductions, I'm sure you've heard that we've made with some of our faculty who took retirement or who were furloughed. Those conversations happened at the lowest level with department chairs and deans, looking at the load of the faculty, looking at the classes that would have to be taught, making sure those areas are fully covered so that students who are the end users of our degrees, end users in our courses and programs, will not receive an inferior product or will not receive inferior instruction. The courses will still keep the Andrews rigor, the Andrews brand, because we made those decisions talking with the persons who are closest to the programs and the courses, department chairs and deans, to make sure that when we make those changes, the quality and the integrity of the program were maintained.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so we just have a few more questions I'm seeing here, and it seems like we've answered in some way most of these questions. One explicitly asks about when we need to make a decision about the remote learning. Is it too late to switch to online remote learning on August 16th, which is the week before school starts? So is that too late to make a decision, I think is what the question is asking, waiting to see if I-20s are processed. Can we wait till the last minute to decide to study remotely?
Well, I will say one thing. Coronavirus has changed all of our ideas of calendars. And yes, you can wait until the last minute because we understand that sometimes things change within 24 hours. You may not be able to get a flight out, or you may, by some miracle, get a visa just right in time and you're on your plane and you go. Absolutely, you can decide to do remote instruction. You just need to contact us at Andrews. First, go to your advisor. If you have any questions or problems, then you can contact Dr. Stuart, or you can contact me if you're a graduate student, or you can contact Aaron Mouchon if you're an undergraduate student. We will work with you. We will make it possible for you to continue no matter what has happened. Yeah, we've learned to be very flexible. We've learned to be able to respond as quickly as we can. I think we mentioned before that if you have individual questions, we will look at these questions that are individual cases and respond to those individual cases. But I also noticed that there are questions about how much time it's taking to get an I-20. And really some of that, just as a blanket statement, really does have to do with the embassies and the problems we even have in the federal government with some of the issues that are just there.
Thank you for that. Yes, in our monitoring of the situation around the world, most embassies, consulates are closed at the moment, though we are seeing signs of reopening here and there. We're hearing from students that some of the students are even getting visa appointments as early as July, but it's still really up in the air. So it's about monitoring, paying attention, looking for messages from the local embassy, the local consulate to see what will be the time frame for those visa appointments. If you have a question about a specific case relating to I-20, visa, time frame, that kind of thing, don't hesitate to email my office at iss@andrews.edu. If you're an undergraduate student, feel free to email Aaron Mushan at Explore. Explore at, I posted that. Explore@andrews.edu, I think is what it is. Yes, there we go. We will continue communicating information. As many of us have been saying on this webinar, the information seems to change every day. And so I can tell you that the staff in the International Student Services Office is monitoring the situation every day. We are sending out emails. We will be posting updates on our website, and updates are also being posted in other venues too, on the main Andrews site through the Andrews Facebook page. So because I'm not seeing any new questions, well, here's one more. One more that just popped up about student employment. Will student employment return in the fall? If yes, how soon? How will that work? I think that's a question that maybe we haven't touched on.
So I just typed a quick answer, but I'm happy to share it.
Okay, I missed that. Sorry.
Yes, there will be student labor positions available in the fall, and it's a little difficult to say how soon. Most of our student labor positions begin with the first day of classes, August 24, but there may be some work sites that as they're revving up and gearing up, they may begin a few days early. So that will be dependent on the work site. But yes, there will be some student labor positions opened, and you can definitely check with student employment on how to seek that availability. Great question.
Since I'm not seeing any new questions, I think that this might be a good time to bring this webinar to a close, but that doesn't mean we're bringing a close to your opportunity to ask questions. There are many venues for you to ask questions. So please feel free to reach out to one or all of us in this webinar, and we will be glad to get back to you and help you through the process, help you in your own specific case within this uncertainty that all of us are experiencing. So I am going to end the webinar now with a quick word of prayer, and then we will cease the webinar for today. So again, I will ask you to bow your heads wherever you are. Dear Father in heaven, once again, thank you for your love and mercy. You know our plans. You know all of our worries, our concerns, our anxieties, and you know our hearts. Please be with us on our individual journeys that we are all each on and sometimes feel alone in. And be with us as we come together, all of us as a campus community. We pray these things in your name. Amen.